Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of The Screams Continue. My name is Scott Broad, and I'm one of the executive producers for the documentary Season of Screams, The Legacy of Knott's Scary Farm's Halloween Haunt. Myself and my best friend and business partner of 40 years, David Love, produced this 15 years ago. Dave, come on in.
Well, howdy, folks.
What's the well howdy? Are we on the mine train ride at Knott's Berry Farm?
No, that's my Marty Moose imitation.
Marty Moose? Sounds like more like Marty the Moron. Who's Marty Moose?
On vacation, you silly man, with Chevy Chase. And Chevy Chase was the star of that movie, and he punched out Marty Moose, remember?
Oh, okay, I do. And for all of you people watching, what famous park was that movie filmed at the very end?
Comment below, and now we're getting way off subject here. Moron Moose, I like that. That's a character. We're going to develop that one. Enough goofing off here. All right, so this is going to be number 2 in a series of 4 raw interviews that we're doing. Today's interview is going to be with Gene Witham.
You know something about Gene? Gene really got his start as a makeup artist on the very first Planet of the Apes movie. And he was one of the 22 makeup artists that were hired to not only do the main cast, all the extras. Can you imagine how many prosthetics they had to make for that?
So yeah, Gene Witham was a street performer at Knott's Berry Farm back in the day. He did a lot of the live street shows, gunfights. He was a stunt person. And he was also a very accomplished makeup artist that did work on the Planet of the Apes. When the first Scary Farm came about, he was asked to head up the makeup department for the very first one. And as you're going to hear in his interview, it was quite the challenge. He had only 3 people, himself and 2 other people, to do the makeup. So it's quite a story. And, you know, we were only able to use small pieces of everybody's interview in the final cut of Season of Screams. So what's nice about these raw interviews, you kind of hear more of their story that wasn't part of the documentary. So I think it's a lot of fun. So I definitely check it out, and we'd love to hear your comments below about what you think. All right, before we get to Gene's interview, I got to do a shameless plug. Our Season of Screams merchandise store is now open, and you can pick up a hat, a t-shirt, a hoodie sweater, a poster, and as you can see behind me, we're using some of the original artwork from the documentary. Just go to seasonofscreams.store and check it out.
Partial proceeds will go to the Lupus Foundation of America, Wisconsin chapter. And they badly need funding. They badly need more research. And portions of these proceeds from the sales of Season of Scream merchandise will be going to the Lupus Foundation of America, the Wisconsin chapter.
Hey, if you like what we're doing, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really does help us out. And without further ado, here is Mr. Gene Witham.
Bill Hollingshead had an invite from the manager of Seymour, who's Larry Vincent, to host a show. And the concept was to host a show at the John Wayne Theater, which had just been built. Bill Hollingshead couldn't get it together at the time with the Knott organization, so it took a year for it to come to fruition. In the meantime, in early August '73, we said we would like to do the haunt. Came up with this program where we would have Larry host a movie presentation at the John Wayne Theater, and we would take Ghost Town and convert it into a real ghost town. And we tried several ideas in the month of August and September, and October 1st we got permission to do the haunt. It had gone through a lot of different twists up to that point. The Knott family, which controlled Knott's Berry Farm at that time, didn't care very much for the idea. Everyone was opposed to it except for Darrell Anderson, who said he would approve it, but he didn't want to be involved in it. that time, there was only one person who, in the Knott family, who was in favor of the idea completely from beginning to end. And remarkably, it was Walter Knott. He gave the final vote of approval, which, as it turned out, was the only vote from the family, but it carried its weight. And we were told we had 3.5 weeks to put it together. Walt loved Ghost Town. That was his baby. He knew how to manage people, to entertain people. And in his opinion, there was no better place for it to go than the Ghost Town. And he felt that the elements of the Ghost Town and the elements of Halloween Haunt as our creative idea would entertain people and would be in the spirit and keeping of what he had brought this ghost town to Southern California to begin with. Everything was in keeping. He liked it, and he said it's going to entertain people. It's going to make people laugh. It's going to make people react, and that's what I like. There was a lot of problems opening. You got to understand, this was the first time anyone had done anything like this at Knott's or ostensibly anywhere. We were flying by the seat of our pants. What's going to work, what's not going to work, how much is this going to take to get it completed? It was a major hassle, one of love, but still, being the first, we didn't know all the things that we were going to encounter, had no way of knowing, and we found ourselves really flying in the dark. Will this work? Will this not work? Yeah, in that respect, there was a lot of hard times opening. We had never had the amount of people being made up at one time, which was my specialty. We didn't know how to do assembly line makeup. We learned very quickly. We had 11 people in the street crew, which were stuntmen and supportive staff, and all of them had appliances. There was only myself and my wife at the time and her sister to do the makeup for 37 people. Now, it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but the characters were the Planet of the Apes. Each one had a 3-piece appliance, and it took normally 3.5 hours to do each one. We had an hour and a half to make up 37 people in full makeup that would last 5 hours. If somebody had told me today that I was going to do that by myself, I would have said, yeah, right. We did it. If you ask me how we did it, what technique was different, I couldn't tell you, because it was just, we got to do it, and we did it. There are some areas that we had never touched before in production. How are we going to get these effects to work? We didn't know whether they would work. They'd never been tried. Some effects were built and had been used one time before opening, because we were still a functioning entity and had very little time to prepare between point A and point B. I say it, I don't mean it to sound negative, because it was fun. You got to understand, the Knott's Berry Farm at that time was averaging in a daily intake between 14 and 17,000 people in the course of a day on a major weekend. The opening of Halloween Haunt, we produced 27,000 people at the gate to come in the space of an hour and a half. This was pre-sold tickets and tickets at the gate. At 27,000 people, we shut the gate down and had to turn people away. Everybody wanted to be there, and for the very first haunt, everybody was allowed to come in costume. Fortunately, they don't do that anymore because it was a safety hazard. But we found that we were overwhelmed with people in a rush, like herds of cattle coming through. We were scared. We didn't know what we had created in terms of the volume of interest. So when we saw all these people at the front gate, it was like, oh, what do we do now? What if it fails? We had a lot of doubts. But I think the opening of the gate to the size of crowd that we had gave us the impetus to go further, not only in our performances and the interaction with people at the time. It made us feel that we had succeeded, but we didn't know how or why. The second year, we topped it by 10,000 people on the opening day. When you put 37,000 people through the gate in the space of an hour and a half, continuously, at, back then it was $5.50 a ticket, it's amazing. It does something to your psyche that says, God, we did it right. We were all tired after the first one because we were continuously performing. There was just this nucleus group, but it was a good tired. Well, we did it. Yeah, was it the optimum staff? No. But we did pull it off, yeah. I wish I could have bottled it because I would be the richest man in the world. There was something about the family unity of Knott, which ran the park. The interaction between the Knott family and every employee. You gotta understand, Knott. People don't understand the power of this one little man. Walter Knott knew the first name of every employee at Knott's Berry Farm. And I mean the street sweepers to the people in the attractions and rides, and as far out as his packing plant. And he made personal contact with them. There isn't a person that worked at Knott during that time period who couldn't say that they had an interactive meeting at least once with Walter. They admired the man. They admired the family ethic. You went to work at Knott and you became a part of a team in production, but you became a part of a family. I'm fond of telling the story that a lot of us that worked in the street characters, on our days off, where everyone else in all these other jobs, these mundane, lifeless jobs that they hold, they can't wait to get away. We at Knott's couldn't wait to come back. So we would take our days off instead of going and lounging on the beach like a lot of people, kids our age then would do. We'd go back to Knott. We'd spend our day off at Knott enjoying the company of the very people that we worked with, that we played with, and ostensibly that we lived with for so long. It's a bittersweet feeling. We are proud of our involvement. We are proud of the baby we created. It's taken a long time for some of us to be acknowledged for that baby. That's the bittersweet. If we had 31 years of accolades, it probably wouldn't have the meaning that this video, the events that have grown up around it, what it means to us now. You've given birth to something You've watched it grow. Some of us have been involved in it from the start. Jan Cranston, myself, we haven't set foot in Knott's since '74. In my case, it's because I've been on the other side of the country. In Jan's case, and probably in mine too, if we went back and saw the event as it is now, it had grown to such proportion that we couldn't recognize it. It's scary to realize that it took so few people to put it together then, and now to see the hordes that it takes to put on, it's scary. It really is. The people that were involved at the very beginning had a dedication that I'm sure still lives today to the haunt. We're all joined at it because it's part of us, and it always will be. That camaraderie still exists, the love still exists, but the bitterness of watching it grow out of control, out of our control. It's no longer our baby, it's the world's baby. I'm glad, I'm happy, but I'm sad too. In the initial confrontation between Bill Hollingshead and the powers that be, Martha Boyd and whatnot, in trying to seek permission, I alluded to the fact that Darryl was in favor of it, but because of his family involvement and his religious beliefs, he didn't personally want to take part in it. We thought it was scuttled. Walter Knott took a walk through the park, and he had a meeting, as he usually did, conversations with his key people. And this particular day, he had Darryl and Champ Gabler walking with him. And they were discussing the fact that there was a vote that had been taken, apparently within the family, that was negative about this idea of the haunt. Walter said he wanted to know what the idea was. What was it we wanted to do? And Darryl was a little hesitant to back out on his idea, but Champ Gabler was speaking for Bill Hollingshead and the crew, and he told him, we'd like to have a big Halloween party. And Walter wanted to know what the situation was. Well, the family had voted negatively against it. And at about this point, they had reached a landmark within Knott's, which is a bench that has two permanent figures on each end. Walt sat down in between the two figures and took a moment and looked around, looked at Ghost Town, and said, I want a party. I want to see it here. I'm voting for it. That's my vote. That's all I have to say on the matter. For Walt to vote unanimously over the rest of the people was rare. He usually deferred a lot of the decision-making to his family. This was different. This was something he wanted. This was something he approved, and it wasn't going to be discussed. I will always respect a man for that. Just like I'll always respect Larry Vincent. We have alluded to it earlier that Larry did get up off his deathbed to do the second hunt. People still don't realize how much Larry Vincent loved the Halloween haunt. How much a part of the haunt he was and should always be. Without him, the first one would never have gone off. There was no draw. I mean, how many times can you go to a big park and have a Halloween party? He was the draw. He was the catalyst that pulled it all together and should always be remembered for it. He touched the lives of everybody involved in the initial haunt, personally, some more than others. And Walter gave us the opportunity to carry the idea on. And it's through him and his legacy of innovative techniques and forthright thinking that Knott's has become what it is today. And I'd like to remember that. Every time those doors open and the gates swing back at Halloween Haunt, there should be a memory sparked in everybody of how it started, who brought it, who made it work, and whose spirit still guides everybody in there.